Well, hello there, and welcome to day 97 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. I thought, as I go through my BAFTA nominees list this week, that I would include one of the documentary nominated for documentary feature. And so I decided to have a look at the 2020 film My Octopus Teacher, which has been nominated for both Best Documentary Feature for BAFTA and for the Academy Award Oscar. Now, unfortunately, just to sort of take a step back before I talk about the film, documentary features are one of the categories where, frankly, this is going to be my only film that I would have seen nominated. And as I've mentioned throughout my process of this series, documentaries are, unfortunately, a maligned part of filmmaking, particularly by me. And so as part of the process, I've tried to continually watch more and more documentaries to help encourage my understanding of the documentary filmmaking process. But I thought, in spite of the fact that I won't really be able to talk with great authority about the nominees and the potential winner for this year, I wanted to at least get one example of that category. I suppose, as an extension of that, on some degree, my knowledge and experience of wildlife documentary representation is very minimal. I definitely grew up liking wildlife filmmaking. I mean, like everyone, anyone who's owned a television, I have grown up with David Attenborough and watched things like Our Planet and Walking with Dinosaurs, and had that love of animals and nature being represented in film and television. But as I've grown older, I really notice that I have no real passion or knowledge of watching documentaries about the natural world, about animal cultures, and it's a shame, really, because it's something that really does deserve the time and attention. I mean, as I say, David Attenborough, his filmmaking oeuvre is extraordinary, and of course he is also a nominated one of the nominations for the BAFTA. And going into this, even watching this film, I was kind of dreading the idea of having to watch a film focusing on a filmmaker's experience observing an octopi. Oh, sorry, an octopus, not an octopi. That's a plural. And because there is something to it's funny, really. The human relationship with octopus is quite unusual, insofar as this is not my first experience in storytelling, whether factual or fictional, of a human really finding a relationship with an octopus. I've definitely encountered dramas and other writing about the inner workings of the creature from an anthropomorphized perspective, and it's unusual because, I mean, an octopus is really, frankly, it is a mollusk, and on some level you'd think that we would be aware that these creatures don't have the same thinking process, not even relationship to the world as other mammals, never mind as humans. And yet, there's something about them that we find relatable. They don't have the spider problem. I often talk about the representation of spiders and the idea that the phobia, why it's such a common phobia, is that it comes from the alienation principle, that we don't understand the experience of a spider to such a degree that there is zero empathy, and that's where the fear really is at its base. You know, and you could go from the spider all the way through to the xenomorph in Alien. You know, that idea of something that we understand their biological principle, we understand how they function, but we are afraid because we don't know what they think or feel, and we can never know that. And yet, with an octopus, we find ourselves finding that anthropomorphization, the same that we would with a cat or a dog, or even mammals that we might not keep as pets, that we see the humanity in them in some capacity. So the film follows Craig Foster, who is a documentary filmmaker, and he's an environmentalist and a diver, and he spends a year observing this octopus, and there is something quite beautiful and remarkable about underwater photography is an art form. There is something genuinely visually stunning. I mean, he talks extensively about how the world of the underwater cultures is like a forest, and he constantly refers to it as a forest because on some level it is, and there's something about it that just has this beauty and grace and mystery to it. I mean, the use of cinematography underwater is quite an explored territory now. I mean, Werner Herzog has done it, and of course David Attenborough, and yet every time it's done, there is a different perspective on it, and there is the thing that really carries this film is it's genuinely so beautiful. And you look at this octopus and the way it moves through the water, and there is something hypnotic about it, almost like it's dancing. And I think that is the first crutch almost to link you into this film, to hook you into this film, where you genuinely are intrigued by this mysterious world, and you are intrigued by this creature that lives in this jungle. And you really do start to relate to... This is a case of a documentarian putting himself into his work. Now, he isn't actually the director of this film. It was actually directed by Pippa Ehrlich and James Reed. But the way that he places himself in the film, and the fact that he is front and centre, and he is the one diving and observing this octopus and developing this relationship to this creature as he watches it live in its natural habitat, you really get an understanding of him. And he alludes to his life and his experience growing up in South Africa, and his desire to want to connect to the natural world. And yet, remarkably, you always have a distance from him. He starts by saying that at the time in which he started to make the documentary, he was having some personal difficulties, but you never find out what they are. And yet you relate to his emotional journey, and you relate to the fact that as he observes this octopus, he becomes emotionally attached to it. And we as an audience, through him, develop that same attachment. So that through the stages of the film, where you're watching this creature being attacked by pajama sharks who are its predator, or you observe it as a predator itself to other creatures that it hunts, fish, crabs, lobsters, you really do get this full perspective on this creature. and the fact that there are moments when of course he interacts directly with it, and he convinces you, and on some level you don't really need convincing, that it is playfully interact with him, that it knows him like a pet would know someone, and that he develops this bond with the octopus. And it's funny because, as I said, going in, I expected to be quite cynical and say, well, it's just not something I see myself being particularly interested in. Octopi are not creatures that I particularly have any fascination for. But the fact that it focuses on one, and the fact that it goes to such great lengths to explore this experience is really what invests you. It's funny, really, because I would relate it to Life in a Day, the film I spoke to a few weeks ago about how a documentarian can with enough footage can curate a very rich and powerful narrative, and that you can capture the lives of so many people and stories in one single day, in spite of the fact that he received hundreds of thousands of submissions. And the art comes in the curation and in the way that you can construct a narrative through the visual and through the representation of the everyday. And similarly, this film, or I suppose conversely, this film, by taking 1 year to observe this octopus, and Craig Foster filmed every single day, the art of it then comes into choosing what to film and what sections to curate and turn into narrative, and how to get the full perspective of this story from beginning to end, so that you actually feel like you've gone on a journey as much as you would do with a fictional narrative which has a script and a structure to it. And that's really where the artistry comes from. Like I say, there are the two elements. There's the curation and the story building, and then there is the visual world building. And bringing these two together creates this genuinely phenomenal documentary that by the end I did care about this octopus. I did care about its journey, and what the lifespan of this creature looks like, and whether it would get to live that whole lifespan and do all the things that an animal like that gets to do. And as I say, it's remarkable in that respect, because to go from some apathy to investment is a difficult thing to achieve, and this film definitely did that. No, I'm glad I watched it. I totally understand why it's been nominated, and as I say, I won't really have the opportunity to compare it and determine whether it warrants winning, but in isolation, I definitely think this was a really interesting piece of factual filmmaking. Thank you for joining me. If you like this video, please click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you want further videos, and click that little bell to get notifications when I do new uploads. As I mentioned endlessly now, we are only a few days from the BAFTA live stream, which I'll be doing on Sunday at 7 p.m. So please follow me on my socials to keep track of that, as I, for the rest of this week, continue to upload nominee videos. Thank you for joining me. Oh, if you could, please follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley. Thank you for joining me. Take care.